Welcome to the Yeoman Podcast. I am your host, Geoff Graham, recording today, October 21st, from the little studio at Big Ridge Mountain Club. With me again for his, I think, third appearance on Yeoman, making him our most frequent guest, is my eldest brother, Vince Graham. Vince, welcome.
Well, thank you, brother. It's my honor to be here again, and for a third time. I'm looking forward to this conversation. You've done such a great job and have such esteemed guests that I'll try to do my best to measure up to your quality.
Well, you do a great job. I will. So, where are you? Where are you recording from?
I'm recording from my courtyard at my house in Charleston, 5 Charles Street, aka Clay Pots. So, yeah, it's very peaceful.
It's a beautiful spot, and I look forward to coming down there in a couple of weeks. I'm going to see you early November, I think. So before we get in, I want to say I always intend to plug one of my little startups, periodical.inc. I encourage y'all to go check it out. If you're tired of getting up in the morning and looking at your phone to read all the cool things you subscribe to while you drink your coffee, or you want to read the cool newsletters or Substacks or blogs that are your favorite things when you're going to bed, but you do not want to do it via a screen, Periodical goes out, it grabs all that content. You tell it what your sources are. It grabs all your content, and we print it in your own bespoke little personalized publication and send it to you. Vince is one of our subscribers.
I am a very happy customer. I fully endorse.
Thank you. Some of the things in my periodical, I've got. I love the Front Porch Republic. They're very suited for periodical. Like it, they're in here. Paul Kingsnorth's Abbey of Misrule is in here. Peter Gray, if you're familiar with him, a psychologist who talks a lot about education, he has a blog, Play Makes Us Human. He's in my edition. And Brian Kaplan has a new post from Bet on It. He's in here as well. But we grab all that stuff and format it, and compile it together and print you out an 80-page periodical and mail it to you. So you get it either once or twice a month, whatever you like. So go check that out. That's the end of that plug. I always forget to endorse it, but the one time that I did before, we had like 5 people subscribe. So I was like, maybe I should keep doing this. But that's not why we're here today. Vince and I, we have been over the years, Vince and I are partners in the Ion Company. We're the developers of Ion in Mount Pleasant. And over the years, we have talked a lot, reflected a lot about some of the things we feel like we did that were particularly, that just ended up working out to help the neighborhood be the kind of place it is. And we're aware of those things, and a handful of other people are aware of those things. But we often hear other people talk about the neighborhood, and they have a misunderstanding about how the neighborhood came to be, particularly with regard to sort of our role as the master developer and and how they tend to think it was a bit more, command and control than it really was. And so because if people sort of persist in that misunderstanding, we think it can lead in a really kind of bad direction for in the small part, maybe for the neighborhood as it continues to evolve. But for other people who are building new, wonderful places in different locations. So Vince and I have been talking about we really need to write something down and, put something together. But I was like, hey, why don't we just record something? That'll be a lot faster. It'll be a lot easier. Maybe we'll take that and turn it into something written down later. But so this is that conversation. Vince, you want to tee us up?
Sure. Well, I think to start, it's when we started Ion, when we finally got approval in 1997, we had to. It took a long time to get approval, and then all of a sudden we were approved, and it's the dog that caught the car. It's like, now what do we do? And it was a big project that our late father was a partner too, Tom, and we were trying to figure out how we could do it and still capture. You mentioned bespoke a little while ago, Geoff, about periodical, but how we could infuse soul into it so that it didn't come out in kind of the cookie cutter fashion that you see a lot of big developments. And
yeah, additional. So Ion's 244 acres infill location. We were approved for 762 home sites. And mixed use, some neighborhood commercial, schools, churches, things like that. But a really big project. And our company was very, very small, like definitely like a boutique developer, a little tiny thing. We were not we had people at the time being like, you're not big enough to do this. You should sell this project to a big developer or something like that. So we needed to figure that out.
Yeah, and just a little bit more meat on that bone, it's the 244 acres. So for context, that is about the size of Charleston south of Broad Street. It's bigger than the old city of Jerusalem. It's probably bigger than Florence during the Renaissance. It's big if you think about it in those terms. And we had been involved, Geoff and myself, in other projects, the biggest one being New Point, which was 53 acres. So this is almost 5 times the size of that. Geoff, when you came out of Davidson, you had served as our general manager for a little infill project in Beaufort, Broad Street. But
11 acres.
Yeah. And so we were no stranger to managing projects, and this was just much, much bigger. I'll also say that neither of us, I think we were fortunate to have a background in building and development, both having grown up and under our father's roof with development, but also you and I individually have been involved in building actual houses. So we new builders had worked for builders, appreciated their independent streak and their entrepreneurialism, their artisanship, or at least some of them. So we'd been around that. And I think, as we got approved, to your point that many people said, oh, you're too small to do this. We had overtures from big builders, production builders, to come in who would just have bought all the lots. But we wanted to do something more than just that kind of assembly line approach to develop.
Yeah, so I hadn't really thought about it, but your experience in construction, through high school, maybe some in college too. I can't remember. Yeah. Mine too, through high school and college, and then after. All the builders we worked with were all kind of maverick builders, smaller, entrepreneurial, very independent streak, strong commitment to doing really special things. I didn't have any.
They were very hands-on too. If you remember, Geoff, I mean, these were the guys who they weren't just driving around in their F-150. They came to the job site and put on a tool belt and worked alongside the subcontractors.
Yeah,
old school.
It was. I don't think either of us had any experience at all to institutional development. Is that right? I know I didn't.
No, I didn't either.
Thinking private equity or larger scale kind of spreadsheet type real estate development. Mm-hmm. But the neighborhood Ion certainly could have been done that way. It would have been a very different project, but it could have been done that way. People tend to, you shared when we were talking about this a few weeks ago, you talked about shortly after we got our approvals in 1997, you and I were walking around the property and just trying to take in the enormity of the project. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is huge. How do we do this?
Yeah. So a thing that I think that people, and maybe we'll start with this, a thing I think a lot of people, they walk through the neighborhood, they attribute the aesthetic success of the project and just the kind of that it's been a successful project, sort of that they attribute that to like, oh, well, there's a code and like really tight approval processes and the developer or the people who were in charge of architecture, they really like tightly controlled everything. And it's just amazing that they were able to do that with how diverse the project gets. And that whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's like a total misunderstanding of what happened. And I would hate for people to walk through the neighborhood, visit, live there, whatever, and think that that's how it got to be the way it was, because that's not how it happened at all. We did have a code, very simple code. We did have design review processes that were pretty streamlined, but for the most part, our job as the developer, in addition to planning the project, was largely to carry a torch, like to be cheerleaders for what we wanted to see happen and recruit builders, architects, designers, trades, buyers, custom home buyers and buyers of spec houses also, that really loved what we were trying to do and we would talk about regularly that our job was to build the stage and that everybody else came and did the great performances. Do you want to, Vince, can you share, like in the early days, maybe can you describe sort of our phasing, our first phase, how we started with that?
Yeah, but before I do that, just to expand a little bit on what you said, I think it was very important that we, as you're describing, we saw it as as a developer, we distinguish from most and seeing it in a different way. And one of the foundational things that we have in the neighborhood is that we understand is relationship. And first, the relationship between the public and the private realm, right? We're building the public realm, the streets, we're building the water lines and sewer lines and sidewalks and lampposts and parks. Someone else is building the private realm of the individual buildings. And most people, I think, come into Ion and like, oh, the architecture's so pretty. What they sometimes miss is it's that relationship between the street and the buildings that create this space between the buildings that's compelling and inviting, invites interaction amongst neighbors and we, to start with, the relationship between the builders. The phasing aspect of it, which was critical, and thanks in large part to Dad, we figured this out early with the sellers, is we're able to buy this 244 acres in small increments over an 8-year period of time. So as I recall, we had the initial property takedown was 40 or 50 acres, and we had a minimum takedown of 30 or 40 acres a year for the next 8 years. So we were able to focus on a small phase. And that first phase, if you remember, Geoff, was actually divided into 3 sub-phases. So as I recall, the first sub-phase was about 40 lots.
43. Yeah.
43. An upside, and that might be good to share that image of where that was in the neighborhood at some point. It's like right on the edge, close to the main entrance or the main road that comes by. So we're really bootstrapping this thing. We had a minimum infrastructure cost, things like that. So we were able to focus on that. The upside of all the controversy that we had to endure in getting the neighborhood approval is we were on the front page or in the paper, on the news a lot. So by the time we finally did get approval, we had people lined up to want to buy lots. And they were familiar with New Point or Broad Street or what have you, and so they were really interested in that. We started, as you recall, Geoff, I think we were introduced, one of our supporters who would come to the council meetings and voice support for the project, introduced us to Jack Burton, who was a really solid guy, solid builder. And so I think he was the first builder that we talked to. And I can't remember, and we're going from memory here, Geoff. I think, was it you who said, well, let's start with every builder in the phone book, or every builder who's a member of the Charleston Trident Home Builders Association? And we had a lot of candidates, but we quickly winnowed them down who, in a variety of ways, and that's worth talking about. But I remember that first conversation with Jack. We said, all right, Jack, you're going to be building close to other builders, right across the street or in close proximity on either side. Who would you feel comfortable building alongside? So Jack had a whole list of people that, 5 or 6, that he said, you need to talk to these other people.
Yeah. He did. He gave us that seed list, and a few people, architects and real estate folks in the community, gave us their own seed people as well. Jack's was the first one we started with, and then we went around and just met with those people and pretty much asked them the same question, and who has a great reputation for building, having a true commitment to quality and doing something special. And we ended up with 10 kind of set. We invited 11 builders to join the Ion Guild and become our builders. And one, Cook Bonner, was, George Cook at the time, and then Cook Bonner later, he took on as a partner. He was like, I don't think I can. He was mostly on the kind of the James Island, Kiowa side. He's like, I don't think I can build over there, but good luck. But so we had 10 out of the 11 folks were like, yeah, we want to come in and do this. So
yeah, it was almost like a fraternity or a sorority rush, right? We went out and researched these folks and extended bids, and we extended 11, as you said, and 10 returned. But there were some other things we did too. It wasn't just talking to people. We talked to subcontractors. We talked to bankers. We made these surprise visits on Sunday afternoons when no one was at work to see how they kept their job site. It was pretty loose at that point, but there was some kind of as a sorority or fraternity rush would be. But there was some system to it, that a nascent system that we refined later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing I remember about that is all the builders that we were excited about talking to were excited about that process. They were excited about it being something special, like being a part of something special. And they were totally in. Like they bought, they none of them had built things exactly like what we were building before, but they were all excited about what we wanted to do and excited about the community. And when we did extend these sort of formal bids, so to speak, like on our letterhead, these official letters, we're pleased to extend an invitation to you. Hope you will, that kind of thing. And that's how that group came on board. Very early, though. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that none of them, or maybe a few of them, had historic renovation experience, but none had certainly been involved in a process like this. And one of the intangibles that we look for is they had an appreciation for the craft and shared our desire to elevate the craft of building. I know that was the case with several of them.
And for the most part, these were, Mount Pleasant at the time still was an affluent community, and the surrounding areas, Charleston, Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, these were affluent areas. So these were people who were mostly used to building big and expensive homes.
Mm-hmm.
And Ion, when we started, it was the first sale of a home, I think, was $180,000.
160.
160. Okay, so it was, and they all got that. They knew what they were trying to do, and they're like, we got to figure out a different way to build. To build not so there's plenty of luxury homes in the neighborhood, and there were early on, but they were all appreciated that they needed to figure out a way to deliver a really high quality product in smaller, simpler, traditional, vernacular type homes. And that was a big challenge for them.
Yeah, I think these were all like 3 to 5 houses a year kind of guys. Some of them did spec houses. Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, maybe we had a few who built 20 houses a year, but it wasn't your big national production builders. They were all local, small business people.
Yeah. Largely, I think probably almost all of them largely got their business through referrals in the architecture community and the real estate community. Earlier, so that was a fun time building all that process and getting started with it. One of my favorite things we did early on was, after we invited all these people to come together, we had our first Ion Guild tour. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. And I want to say that there wasn't unanimous excitement. I think some were a little bit skeptical.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, let's see what these guys are up to. Sounds interesting. And there was a lot of that too.
You were, Dad was effectively our CFO, I guess, but our chief controller. But he was not real front and center, so we didn't have a lot of gray beards there. And you were maybe 33 years old, and I was 23 or 24, something like that. So they were right to be skeptical.
Yeah. That's right. But somehow we'd managed to get hold of this great piece of property and get it approved. So
I'll say for listeners, we fortunately, I'm incredibly grateful about this, but recorded a long interview with my dad, our father, a little over a year ago, just before he passed away, suddenly, or a few months before he passed away, where we go through this whole history and we talk about the tying up that we talk about his career as a real estate developer, but we generally close with sort of how we got the project tied up and how we did that deal. And we also maybe, and Vince, the first time you and I spoke on Yeoman, we talked about that as well. So if you want to get more into the details of how that deal came together, you could listen to, which is super interesting to some people, particularly those in real estate development. But go check out either of those episodes with Tom Graham or the first one that Vince and I did together. But early on, after we got these guys sort of, signed, they've raised their hands at this point. They haven't put any skin in the game. They haven't started bringing their, they haven't contracted to purchase any lots. They haven't done any of this kind of stuff. They're just like, yes, I'm willing to do it. And we didn't have any deposits or anything like that from them. So we were in sales mode. We needed to sell them on the vision of the neighborhood. And among the very first things we did was to get them all together, I guess on a bus, right? Did we put them on a little bus? We did. Yeah. Them and their
or a couple big vans, maybe. I don't know if it was all on one bus, but
I kind of think it was like a big tour bus, because I remember pulling into New Point in like a big tour bus. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but we had them. They're partnerships, a couple guys together, and they all had kind of critical employees as well. So lead carpenters or project managers, and a bunch of them brought those people. And we went on a tour. We started in Charleston. Is that right? Before we
I think we started in the old village.
That's right.
We started in the old village of Mount Pleasant.
I think you're right. Yeah.
We walked them around. Maybe we started with breakfast and we kind of gave them a overview of the day, and then went to Mount Pleasant and got out and walked around. It's also important, I think we should mention Mackie Hill, who was on board at that point. I think he wasn't Mackie?
Was he? I think he was, actually. Yeah. So Mackie Hill, kind of the chief torchbearer for design in the neighborhood. Not an architect by training. He had started architecture school, but dropped out. It was he was in school in the period of sort of peak modernism at Clemson, and everything that he was interested in was soundly ridiculed there. So he dropped out and became a success, entered real estate his career and was successful in commercial and residential real estate, but retained his passion for traditional vernacular architecture. Vince, how'd you meet Mackie?
I was introduced to him maybe through his father, Max Hill, who was a local realtor, and they were, again, more people who supported the neighborhood. But yeah, Mackie is, in addition to his background, Geoff, I think he ended up graduating with a degree in English or something, but he was a successful real estate broker, but he was a passionate, he knows more about the history and architecture of the Lowcountry, or knows as much as anybody. And so somehow we just connected and brought him on board as our ION design coordinator. And as you say, torchbearer, cheerleader, inspirer.
Mackie was, he had, in his youth and through college and maybe after, I can't remember, he'd worked with some of the greatest remodelers in Charleston on historic, super historic projects, and he was a student of construction. He really understood how buildings went together in a way that earned him, almost immediate trust and confidence with both the builders and the trades we were working with.
Yeah, and he's just so affable. You can't help but like Mackie, and he's firm but gentle in his approach. And if someone wanted to come in and do something that was very strange, he would ask him questions and like, you sure? What have you thought about this? Mackie grew up downtown Charleston and knew the area so well. And as you say, he really was a student of construction and how things fit together. I remember we were in the car one day driving somewhere in downtown Charleston, and you could point to any house in downtown Charleston, and Mackie could not only tell you who designed it and when it was built, but something obscure about the framer's daughter-in-law, some story that he just had this, he has this encyclopedic mind. And, occasionally that could drive you crazy, but it was always fun.
Meetings lasted a long time, really long time, but they were always fun and you learned an enormous amount. But
Right.
You probably spent 15 minutes out of the whole time talking about this. But so that we took that little detour talking about the first guild tours, and all this is we're sort of trying to set up and describe how important it was to get buy-in, like get a whole bunch of different people, independent people, bought in with what we were doing. So we had a great thing about Ion, a great thing for us as the developers. We had these great models all around us. Some of the most beautiful urbanism and diversity of urbanism in America were right here. So, and one of the greatest ones was the Village in Mount Pleasant, the historic little coastal town that began developing before there was a bridge connecting Charleston and Mount Pleasant. Long before that, it is a great, great, beautiful little spot. We started the tour there, and we walked people around. Mackie was definitely there because he would walk around and just point out things that we thought were awesome that we wanted to, have, come in and be in the neighborhood. We wanted our builders to get excited about and do that. Did we have any architects on that tour, or was it just builders?
I think it was just builders. We can go back and look. We have that great picture on the porch in New Point.
Yeah.
But we can go and look. It's we were trying. The aim was we talked about kind of a different way of seeing development and neighborhood building. We wanted to try to get them to see things the way we were seeing things and appreciate those things. And the old Village, we went downtown, then we drove down to Beaufort, through Beaufort's historic district. For your listeners, Beaufort is a smaller city between Charleston and Savannah, second oldest city in South Carolina after Charleston. So we went there and did the same walk around, and then went over to New Point, this development that we'd been working on since 92. And that was helpful because it showed, oh, hey, I get it. You can build this way anew.
Well, it was really helpful. Like up until we arrived at New Point, and a little more context about New Point, 120 lots. Is that right?
It's 130, 53 acres.
Yeah.
And a small commercial.
Island.
All right.
Was there any commercial at the time? I think that was still planned.
I don't think they had either just started or it was in the planning mode at that point. A small 7,000 square feet of commercial right at the front. So that may not have even been there.
And Vince developed that with his partner Bob Turner, who's the developer of Habersham. Now still down at Beaufort. Project totally worth checking out. Little factoid: Vince and Bob went to high school together. That's how y'all came together.
Elementary school.
Elementary. Oh, all right. Yeah. Did he go to Shamley?
He went to Montgomery Elementary and then Shamley High School.
Yeah, so both elementary and high school. Mm-hmm. So this is a project that Vince began, and I think Bob joined you like almost immediately. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Mom and our parents were partners too.
Mm-hmm.
They're
And
minority partners because the bank wouldn't we needed another personal guarantee that was meant something more than mine at
so
20,
Vince was about
27
14
years
years
old.
old. Yeah. So this was, anyway, New Point this was very early, like super early in the new urbanism world. And when Vince was sort of underway, I don't even think you had heard or knew much about new urbanism, or it was just sort of freshly on your radar screen.
Well, the name hadn't been invented yet.
People were calling them, or they were, if they had a name, they were starting to call them TNDs, traditional neighborhood developments.
Yeah. And neo-traditional, this kind of thing.
So New Point is a beautiful, small compared to Ion project on Ladies Island. It's on the river. There's a beautiful park right there on the river. And Beaufort is a small market. So I think like a successful month for y'all would be to sell a lot or sell a house. Like it was, it's not a big market there. But I remember, so in high school, towards the end of I think my senior year, I would go down and sort of, clear brush or whatever down at New Point and with a friend of mine, and Vince lived in a house. Anyway, I won't get into the story. But early on, I remember seeing an ad for New Point in the like Homes and Land. Is that what it's called? Land and Homes, or Homes and Land?
Homes and Land, yeah.
The local real estate rag, and it had a New Point ad on it. I was like, oh, that's cool, this New Point ad. And in quotes underneath this beautiful picture, and it really is beautiful. The New Point green is totally beautiful, and the architecture that sits there, like the significant majority of it, designed by historical concepts. It just sort of worked out that way. The buyers saw a beautiful house by Jim Strickland, and so they kept hiring him to do these houses. Not all of them are historical concepts, but most of them are. But it's this beautiful picture, and the live oaks and the river, and it says New Point, and it has in quotes below it. It says it says it's been called the most beautiful blend of architecture and landscape architecture of the modern era. And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool, Vince. Who said that? He's like, oh, I did.
Do what you have to do. Sell a house or a lot. Yeah, and get people over there.
So we get off the vans or the bus, I can't remember, and we get out. And up until this point, we've been walking around historic architecture with this nascent guild, these builders we aspire to come in and be our partners to help make this place a reality. And as Vince said before, they're encouraging and optimistic and excited, and they've had a good time on the tour, and we've looked at a bunch of great architecture, and they get what we're talking about with urbanism, and they've gotten to know each other, and it's a convivial group. It's like people are having a good time. And then we get to New Point, and they get out and none of them had been there as far as I know, and they get out of the bus or the vans or however we did it, and they were just absolutely amazed. They were like, oh my goodness, these guys did it in Beaufort, South Carolina. These guys, and I was not really involved in that project, but like it can be done. And it was as if just in a moment, all of the skepticism disappeared. And then we also had an Alan Patterson met us, right? That's and one of the great, builders in Beaufort, a guy.
Maybe was Monty Jones there too? Or Steve Heister?
That sounds right. Yeah. So these guys that had been building in the neighborhood in New Point and were, of the kind of cut from the same cloth as the builders that we brought down there, like immediate rapport. They just started walking through houses and talking about how they did things. And and all of those builders, the 10 builders we had with us, were just really excited. It was like, we're going to do something. We're going to do something together and it's going to be really special. Um, and that's how we did it, right? Like that's how we got them sort of whipped into being excited about it.
Yeah, I think you're making it a little rosy because there was still, after the trip, remember after New Point, we came back and we served everybody, barbecue and beer or something on the site next to the lake.
Right.
But there's still, they were excited in the moment, but then, you have to start writing checks and taking risks. And there's still a healthy amount of skepticism, in that first phase. Can this really work?
But we also still had hurdles. We had obstacles looming in front of us. There was prospective people were getting petition signed to revoke our zoning.
That's right. Yeah, we still had that legal battle in front of us that went to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, we not just enough, like all the challenges that real estate developers face in trying to do things. We still had to deliver lots. So even that, we hadn't done that yet. Mm-hmm. Like, were we under? Had we broken ground on infrastructure yet by that point?
I think we broke ground in late summer of '97. Right. So, yeah, I think we were underway, but nothing was complete.
Yeah,
it was still, and I think that was part of the, that pioneering era. You put on your boots and get in your pickup truck and I mean it's really, you're at the ugly stage, but it's a stage that builders who are familiar with, who've done any kind of involved in new development, so they kind of understood it. But
yeah, there's a Jeffrey Moore has this book. Jeffrey spelled with a G correctly. Has this book called Crossing the Chasm. It's an old book, but his famous thing is the technology adoption life cycle curve, and you picture a bell curve, and there are the pioneers are at one side of the curve, this tiny little skinny part of the front end of the tail, and the things that get them excited about products or a business or an opportunity or whatever are totally different than that middle chunk they call the early majority. They're not risky buyers. The early majority or the majority, they're not risky buyers. They need to see it. It needs to have been around, But there's a profile of person that is a pioneer or an early adopter who wants it to succeed. They want to be involved in it early to help, make it happen. Those sorts of things. And this group we had, they were our early adopters. And then that flowed into the same thing with the designers and the buyers that we had to talk about pioneers, because they were, not experienced with construction either. But we came back from that tour and we started, is that when we started pre-sales? Selling lots at that point?
Yeah, roughly that time. I think that certainly helped, because these builders, we handed them a couple of custom contracts. I think roughly half of those first 40 something lots were people their custom contracts. They were ready to build a house for themselves. And so we were able to hand them those. And then all the builders built one or two specs, as I recall, or almost all of them.
So tell me if this is right. I think what we came back, or at either it was that evening or later, it might've been that evening. And we had this cookout and we had the map of phase 1A, those 43 lots that were available. or that were going to be available once we built the infrastructure. And, we're kind of in the woods right here, and there's heavy equipment around. We're maybe doing a little bit of clearing. We're on the edge of a retention pond, which is we're going to redevelop into a lake. So, it took some vision. And we were like, okay, we have been, as Vince alluded earlier, because the rezoning process was contentious, very public. There were a lot of people that were really excited about what we were doing. And so we had a long, long list of people that were signed up who wanted to come in and put a lot under contract. And so we were like, hey, before we go to those folks, we want to get you all involved in the neighborhood, like to actually be an official member of the Ion Guild. You need to put some skin in the game. And it was, did we have them do one lot, or they could do up to 3 or something? Do you remember something like that?
Something like that. Yeah.
So the day before we opened up pre-sales to the general public, we had, I think at that cookout, we opened it up to them, and everybody took a lot, and then we capped them off at something like that. So they had lots where they were going to build specs, which really weren't specs. They were all pre-sales, like the builders led development of a design. And then we brought all these buyers in. And then custom buyers came, and they tied up lots. And we began then making introductions between all these buyers and all the builders. So everybody right out of the gate, as you said, had, 3 to 5 relationships queued up and ready to go.
And it's, we probably left some money on the table in terms of our lot prices.
Yeah.
The lot prices at the time were roughly what you might have been able to buy a conventional lot in a subdivision close by. But ours were much smaller, of course, but we wanted to prime the pump and get them going and reduce risk for them. And just the idea was we wanted as soon as possible to have houses up so that we could, prospective buyers could come in and see what we were doing and illustrate it. And I think it's critical as part of that was, Geoff, you designing and working with one of the guild members, Daly and Sawyer, for your own personal house. So that was skin in the game right there. And I think that was meaningful to say, hey, the developer's going to be in here and doing it himself. That meant a lot.
That was a really great thing to do. I loved that house. But it was great to do on a number of fronts because it helped me to really appreciate what all of these buyers, all these people who were coming, they were going to be going through. And we did my house. It was a compressed timeline. The Southern Living or Southern Progress had a new publication at the time called Coastal Living, and they wanted to feature an idea house in the neighborhood. And they liked my design, and they liked the idea of the developer being involved. And they're like, okay, we want to feature this for the Christmas, the December issue, the idea house in the December issue. I'm like, okay, that's great. We have plenty of time then. And it needs to be ready in July, which was 4 months. So we built Daly and Sawyer. God bless them. They built that house in 4 months. It was a little house, fortunately, but man, that was amazing. So, but all of these custom buyers early on, they were developing plans. We were making introductions to architects. Mackie was doing this great job of helping architects get on the same page, similar to the way we were doing with the builders. The builders were designing their own spec houses. That all the custom, semi-custom stuff there was just a whole bunch of design, and it was many hands make light work. It wasn't light work, but there's a fury of design. But by the time that we were really underway with the sub-phase 1A, we had amassed a plan book of 100 different houses that were designed by more than a dozen architects and designers. I'm sure I have those numbers wrong, but every single one was bespoke. Every single one was designed for that location and with a particular buyer in mind. And that plan book, so to speak, it ended up becoming a plan book that people would riff on constantly, were some of the designs that would constantly be evolved and for subsequent lots, subsequent buyers.
Yeah, and I want to. That was so important. And builders would come in. They would have their plan that they had gotten out of Southern Living plan book, which there are some good plans in there, but they just weren't quite right for what we wanted to do. So Mackie would take them and he would, refine them a little bit. And we had a lot of the architect. These were just house designers. They weren't full registered architects who were involved. They were sometimes folks at the builders, draftspeople that they had worked with, but they were open-minded and kind of went to school with Mackie on traditional design, including your bride, right? Didn't she say she got
Wendy went to Georgia Tech and got a master's degree in architecture, master of science in architecture, and then worked professionally for a few years before moving to the Low Country and hanging her shingle down there for residential architecture. And
I should say this was before she was your bride, so you hadn't.
Yes, yeah, we met at Ion, and she was designing some spec houses for Pat Ilderton, and it was really her first real custom home design type things. And she would tell you that she technically got a degree from Georgia Tech, but she learned architecture from Mackie. She wasn't the only one. He gave now there's a small handful of architecture programs that deserve being called architecture programs, but even now there aren't very many. But back then there was essentially nothing. I think Notre Dame might have been newly embraced architecture as or newly embraced classes. But it was so Mackie really gave tons and dozens of young designers their sort of first real exposure to vernacular traditional classical architecture. Mm-hmm. Some architects they built really outstanding practices now.
Yeah, and a couple more things about your house, Geoff, I think are important. Number one, back to the coastal living, and that was published by Southern Progress. That was a great endorsement. And Burton Craig, remember Burton, who they had done a house, a Southern Living idea house at New Point, and he came in and he really believed in the concept. And Southern Progress deserves a lot of praise for their embrace of seaside and other traditional walking neighborhoods and really advancement of that over the years. And Burton was right in the middle. And so that was a great endorsement that I think helped in the sales process with builders and individuals. And then your design too, Geoff took what was the smallest lot in the first subphase and still probably one of the smallest lots in the neighborhood, this little 35 by 70 foot lot, and
30 by 70.
30 by 70. Yeah, it was super small, and built this house, small 1,200 square foot house that had a 600 square foot accessory dwelling unit, if you will, on the ground floor, which was the third or fourth bedroom, or third and fourth bedrooms, maybe. But that was critical because it was among the reasons why it was critical is you built this small house in the midst of larger houses, and it showed the way. Unfortunately, we had the original vision for Ion was greatly compromised. We had to get approval. We had to eliminate the multifamily and reduce the amount of commercial and do all these things. But we wanted to show people right out of the gate how you could build different size houses in very close proximity. proximate to one another and different price ranges too. And so we demonstrated that, or you did, through construction of your house. So,
and another thing about that, the lot was 30 by 70, but as originally per the original design, it was, well, two things. We weren't going to have a lot on that corner. It was on the corner of Grace and Soul, Soul Street, named for Thomas Sowell. So when you kind of were coming down that, walking or biking or driving down that road, you would face the back of the back of some houses, and we were like, that will just look not good. So we need to address that corner. And those lots are pretty big that front on the lake. So how about we just carve off a little lot on the back so that there will be something right on that corner that will have a presence. So that was how my lot was. And originally it was going to be, I think, 35 by 100 or something like that. And I had my design that it's like the 8th iteration of my house that I've been designing. And I was like, I don't need that much land. I think I just need 30 by 70. We'll get it right up on the street, the double front porch, really triple porch, and it'll be right on the street. And I think I only need 70 feet. So we ended up making the lot even smaller. And it was right next to a house that was that Jack Burton was building. That was a 6,000 square foot house. He was doing a 6,000 square foot spec, which was like, I think it was 6,000. It was big.
I think it was more like 4, but it was big, much bigger than all the other houses.
Yeah.
And I should say, point out, go ahead.
I think it maybe it sold for $600,000.
I think that's right. Yeah. Which was astounding at the time.
Yeah. What were you about to say?
Well, I was going to say that lot, people refer to it as a Geoff lot. And I was recently in Glenwood Park with Catherine Kelly and Victor Dover were leading a tour. Glenwood Park is this super cool little infill development in Atlanta. And they said, they talked about this Geoff lot, right there close to the middle of town, and how that had come about. And, this Catherine had worked with Charles Brewer and Victor in developing the school plan, but that's a Geoff lot. And I think that's used in a lot of charrettes with with Dover Cole and others who are involved in that, because of the way it's just thoughtfully shields the back of another lot and presents a nice statement on the corner. So that was, I think, important. Another thing that was important is we were there all the time, Geoff, in the dirt with everybody and sweating the details of the public realm, the lamp posts, the street trees, the sidewalk widths, the granite along the curb radii, all these things. And I think that made an impression too, on we're sincere about this, we mean it. And that, I feel like that, hopefully that carried through with the builders. They could see that too.
Well, on that, I think that's a really important thing to bring up. And not only that we were there sweating the details, but we were able to sweat the details. Like the nature of our zoning, the PUD that we got approved, it was like, people tend to think like, oh, it was like super specified how everything was. It was actually super broad. So we had wide latitude for, how we would iterate on a subphase, how we might relocate lot lines, how we might change deflections in the road, like all kinds of things. It was not planned out in super detail at all. Mm-hmm. It was very much like, and this is infuriating for our engineer and our contractor, because we were making changes of, we probably a lot of, I was like the infrastructure was, my direct responsibility. And so we upset a lot of people, but we were making changes kind of all the time to take advantage of opportunity. And so we did not fully prescribe the land plan that we began with was, not what we ended up building. Like the elements were there, but the design was super refined from that. And I don't mean like refined in a way. We just like, when you're there, you're like, oh, there's actually like a 2-foot, grade change here, or, over the course of this. It would be cool if we kind of pulled this over, and, oh, there's a tree that we saw it on the tree survey, but we didn't really realize the direction that it was growing. So,
yeah, no, I think it's just to provide some more context on that. We had the design code that was approved, allowed for 5 different street types. And maybe we can show an image of that, Geoff, and when we edit it, we can show that. And we had all the residential structures had to be single family detached, but we could build lots as small as 27 feet. And as you said, we could move things around. And we had a generalized master plan that, Dwani, Plater, Zyberk, and Dover, Cole, and Partners had started with, that we had to then revise to get through the rezoning process. But it was still, Seaman Whiteside helped with that, and Design Works and some others, but it was still kind of general. So, I can remember lots of hours, with you and me over the kitchen table, making these refinements to the plan that we would then give to the engineer. And then, like you say, you still had to work with the actual general contractor who was building the streets, and I think it was Gulfstream maybe. And we were like, oh, well, that, tree is not where the tree surveyor.
The first one was Rogers and Sons.
That's right, Rogers and Sons. Sorry, Gulfstream came later. But we'd make these refinements in the field on the fly. So probably drove people crazy, as you said, but it turned out.
I got to say, like, as difficult as the town of Mount Pleasant was through the rezoning process, the staff there, and they didn't like it that we were changing. We had to have them out. We had to have their engineers out all the time to make sure, but they understood that we were trying to make the place better, like the staff level people did. And it caused a lot of headaches for everybody, but they were generally supportive and accommodating of those things.
Yeah, it's instrumental. And we could probably a whole nother yeoman podcast on the staff and the engineers who we work with so well. And, Joel Ford and all these, wonderful champions. Right.
Yeah, all kinds of people.
Fred Teeter, the fire chief, these unsung heroes of the place that enabled it to be as good as it was.
And many, like getting to know developers, often like the people that we just mentioned, their peers in other places are often the most difficult, like the obstacle people that make it impossible to do things. And we were just between the fire chief, the director of planning, staff engineers, things like that. People were generally real supportive.
Mm-hmm.
That was it's wild to look back and having experience now with other projects and other locations. Now I'm like, wow, that was like a moment in time.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things that if they had not, could have just been, lots of things could have been different. But on the, I wanted to underscore this thing about like the nimbleness, because there are a lot of people who I feel like they celebrate the master plan. They celebrate the master plan process. It's like, oh, you got the plan, you got the code. This is essentially the formula for having a great place. But that was just not it at all. It was so much iteration they're the things that we iterated on. And at the same time, there are the things all of our builders and all of our architects, our landscape architects, like they were all iterating on their own things. This was not just one big project. It was you know, thousands of projects that were underway with everybody making changes and iterating and making adjustments and learning from each other as they go. And there was, maybe we get into, how about we talk about competition too, and then maybe go into the Guild Awards, talk about that.
Yeah. The builders, you mentioned it earlier, we thought of them as our partners and building the neighborhood. And just like any business partner, you want solid people with integrity and know-how and quality oriented. And so we wanted those kind of people to build the neighborhood with us. And we also wanted them to make money, right? Because it was important, because they were going to be our best customers and they would keep buying lots. So we worked hard to cultivate these relationships with them, and to build those. We would have, one of the things we did, we started right out of the gate. I think this was your idea to do, Geoff, but once a month, we would have our guild luncheons. And we would just have everybody over. Maybe it was under a tent, I guess, to start with, or at a builder's house that was under construction if the weather was nice. And we would invite a speaker. And this could be, some world-class architect or famous writer, Witold Rybczynski or Jersey Devil, or it could be just a outstanding brick mason, who would come and give a talk, and we would just serve everybody, sandwiches and potato chips. But it was also part of a deliberate community building exercise. And that was from the start, we had that community spirit of the builders and the subcontractors, and trying to cultivate that competition, because these are, contractors are fiercely independent and competitive. And you would see early on these like a trim carpenter who would walk down the sidewalk and, saw what Joe was doing over there and like go back and like, we can do better than that. I mean, that was almost from the beginning. You could see that.
Yeah. Great thing about having so many different builders in a relatively tight area where you could see what everybody else was doing. You could put your hand on people's houses from the sidewalk.
Yeah.
They were real competitive with each other in the greatest way. Like everybody down to, as you say, carpenters, masons, painters, they were all real competitive with each other. So that competition led, I mean, I think about all these things we did that when I look back at them, they sound like marketing. But in my memory, we were just kind of having fun, trying to figure out how to have fun with everything. And among those, we would have the shindig, which early on was just a big party, that we did to celebrate our successful rezoning and say thank you to all the people that had supported us along the way, and bring people who were interested in the neighborhood. But before too long, maybe it was our third season of development, we had houses underway. We had houses completed, and we had a bunch of examples of great work. And I don't remember where did we come up with the idea for the Guild Awards? Do you have any idea about that?
I really don't. I can't remember. I thought it was your idea.
It's probably your idea. But so in maybe our third year, we had all these builders who'd been really active, and all these people who were beginning to make their careers in the neighborhood, particularly the trades, who were building things that they were really excited about doing. We were like, what we're going to do at this year's shindig? We're going to have an awards, and it's going to be like the Oscars, but for the building trades. And so we asked all of our builders to nominate carpenters, masons.
Yeah, we had all these categories, like
plumbers,
10 or 15 categories.
Yeah,
sheetrockers.
Yeah, all kinds. Yeah, and they would nominate, and then we I want to make sure it says it's still recording on your end, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So mine does too. Yeah. Um, so yeah, we had all these different categories, and our builders would nominate the trades they thought were doing a great job. And then we had the awards committee made up of a subset of the builders. And we got them all clipboards, and we had all the nominations listed out. We'd walk around the neighborhood and look at all these trades work. And you're like, oh, this guy, he's really, really good. I don't know, this guy is better in this way. Or like, can you believe, like, look at the way he did that detail. And so then we kept it super secret, and we got all these, John Slayton, I remember the mason restoration stone worker guy that restored the old family cemetery that's in the neighborhood.
Yeah, the Ion Monument. Yeah.
He made all these little obelisks, little tiny Ion Award obelisks. And at the cookout, we were like, hey, we're doing this award. So guys, make sure and historically we invited the trades to the shindig. So it's just kind of everybody would come.
Well, we invited everybody, neighbors, contractors, their kids, subcontractors. Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, everybody. So it was like a big, fun barbecue, music, that kind of thing. And so then we were like, hey, make sure your trades know they really need to come, or that they really need to come to this one and bring their families. And so I think Mackie was the MC for the awards. And halfway through, after people,
so set the stage. As we have a bluegrass band or something. Yeah. Everybody's hanging out, eating barbecue, drinking beer.
Yeah,
and then kids, halfway through, running around. So informal,
it's
casual.
Late fall, like it's it's like a beautiful time to be there. The no-see-ums are gone. Maybe it's November, and it's big. I don't like
several hundred. Yeah, 300-400 people.
It's, a big number. And all outside, and we have, a trailer is like a towing, like a flatbed, 16-foot trailer, something is the stage where the bluegrass band was playing. And at intermission, Mackie gets up there, and on the mic, he's like, all right, everyone, it's time to announce probably the 1999 Ion Guild Awards. And he had this big thing, and everybody's like, oh, what's this? What's going on? And so Mackie would start describing the work of all the nominees, and he would list out the nominees like this,
Well, go by category. Remember, it's like total Oscar, Academy Award format.
Yeah. And people would, we'd announce the nominees, and people were like, oh, that's amazing. The families would be there. These be like, oh, that's great. And he would go, and after great deliberation, and we went around, we looked at all the projects, and this, the winner is, and would announce that, say, the exterior trim carpenter that won. And he would come up on stage, and Mackie would hand him the obelisk and congratulate him, handshake, picture. And it was like the greatest thing in the world. Just people loved it. And some people cried. Like, talk about all these unsung heroes of our built environment. The mason who's works out in the field, building CMU piers and foundations. And his family is there in the audience, like his wife and his 3 kids, various ages. And he gets up on stage in front of 300 people who represent every sort of person in the whole town, and is recognized as, having made the greatest masonry contribution to the neighborhood of that year. And it was wonderful. And we did that, and it was just the greatest thing. It was one of the things that I just absolutely loved. Everybody loved it. It was great.
Yeah, I agree. It was one of the most gratifying things about really my career in the development business. And it was really important because, these were actually the people who are building the neighborhood. Like you say, they're out there physically doing it. we're punching into our keyboard now, but
Yeah.
they're actually physically out there doing it and throwing their hearts into it,
Mhm.
trying to make it better. And this, that was selfishly for us. They were improving the neighborhood and improving the value of our property. And so we wanted to we wanted to cultivate this kind of competition because we wanted to raise the bar.
Mhm.
And it would just really work well. So it was fun.
It was a lot of fun. I want to know, like, when did we stop doing that? Was it the recession? Like when just like sales volume fell apart? When did we stop doing that?
Yeah, Geoff, we were probably 90% plus finished with the development by 2005 or six.
Yeah.
Maybe 2007. It was, and then the recession happened, and you and Wendy got married and moved back to Atlanta. So, and we got involved.
And there just wasn't the velocity of, like, we didn't maintain the velocity of it, but we could have, totally could have done it. And then we could have expanded it to all of East Cooper, and we could have incorporated remodeling because it was all sort of new construction is what we were focused on. But
I regret that we didn't do more with that. We talked about how can we do some kind of apprenticeship program for high schoolers, things like that. I wish that was a regret that I wish we'd done that.
Yeah.
We did. I'll back up a second though. Remember the guild trips that we took?
Yes. Yeah. Describe that. Describe the first one.
Yeah. So we actually did two, but the first one we decided that we wanted to show the builders and some of the architects, and we gradually evolved the Ion Guild, to include architects and designers too. You had to build in the neighborhood. You had to be a member of the guild, and we should also point out, Geoff, that we didn't just stop at 10. We gradually built the guild, I think, to up to maybe 25. We had a admissions process, and we built it up over time. But at some point, I don't know, remember when that was, 2004, or maybe earlier than that, 2003. Most of the builders had not been down to the Gulf Coast, where Seaside and Rosemary Beach and now Alice Beach were developed. And why would you go to the Gulf Coast when you had the beach right here in Charleston? So we chartered a 727 and just had a 2-day field trip to the Gulf Coast. It included, I think we paid maybe for half the way for the builders, and then others had to pay their own full freight. But it was like $300. It wasn't a lot, and we had set it up so it was
kind
really
of amazed
quick.
that you could charter a 747.
It was a 727 or 717 or something like that.
Whatever. It was like a real plane. We chartered it, and it was like a Delta plane, and just flew direct from Charleston to whatever that little airport
Panama City. Yeah. And got out and had a bus and went and spent the night and saw what they were doing at Seaside, the wonderful things they were doing at Seaside. And Rosemary Beach had just started.
Yeah.
But both Robert Davis, and I think we happened to be there at Seaside at the same time that Geoff Speck and Elizabeth Plater-Zybrick were there. So we just lucked into them giving the tour of Seaside. And Seaside, for those of you, if you don't know, you should know, it's Robert Darrell Davis developed on the Gulf Coast of Florida, between Panama City and Destin. It was one of the first, not the first, examples of new urbanism that was very successful, and it had inspired us in so many ways. So we went there, and then got a tour, had a big party, and the next day went over to Rosemary Beach, where they rolled out the red carpet for us. And
they totally did. I remember that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that must have been like 2001 or 2002.
Could have been.
Because Wendy and I were together. She went on that trip, but we weren't married yet.
Mm-hmm.
So We still lived in Charleston. Yeah, so we took everybody down there, and as you say, we kind of covered most of the costs for our builders, but then we also sold like full freight cost to architects and real estate folks, and
some lawyers and bankers, people who were involved in the development.
Maybe like, I don't know, was it 50 or 100 people? It was a lot.
It was at least 100. It was however many we could fit on the plane.
Yeah, I do remember it was a bit like herding cats. It was a lot of people wanting to wander around and check out things.
I also remember Mackie being a little bit freaked out about it because he had worked so hard and kind of getting people to embrace the low country way. And there's some kind of far out architecture at Seaside, and was not as restrained as you might have in the Low Country. So he was nervous about it.
I don't remember that. Mackie always he's a true champion of Low Country vernacular, or still is. So that was, I guess, that, and then we did a subsequent one and went down to.
We went down to Vero the next year. We went down to Vero Beach, to Windsor, and then hopped over to Celebration that the Disney company was building. And unlike the first trip, when we went on the second trip, the builders were like, we're already doing way better than this. Why'd you bring us here? Yeah. But it was still a fun trip and interesting. And
these were the types of thing we really were. Obviously we wanted to be making the neighborhood better, but so many of these things we did, they were just fun to do. Mm-hmm. And we built such, it's easy to appreciate now. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but there was such a community it was so many different independent people who were all building Ion in their own way. And all of our job was just sort of try and keep everybody going in the same general direction. And, but all kinds of different people doing it. And that was part of what was so great about that vibe of the neighborhood.
Yeah, it really was, Geoff. And I think your point that it was to have fun with it, which we did. We were so probably at the same time kind of stressed out about just needing to make the thing work. But it was so like the story about the Guild Award winners and how gratifying that was to be involved. And looking back on it now, I feel like that we were developing infrastructure and, the streets and the parks and, managing the whole process. But we were also developing opportunity for others. We had run the interference and gotten the approvals to build the place. But it was, and people would come and still come, like to this, what we started out with, how did y'all do this? How did you, lord it over everybody to beat them into good design? And like, as you said, that's not how it works.
Really strict. You must have had you must have had a really tight grip on everything. We're like, really, it's the opposite. It was totally the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. That's that thing that I kind of, when we were talking about this, that I'm like, God, when I hear people talk about this neighborhood, some of them are like totally crediting us with, it's amazing that you were able to make all these little houses so diverse and there's so much variety and it appears to be so organic. I'm like, no, it appears to be organic because it was that's why. So if you're, whatever you're advocating for or whatever you're trying to build and whatever place you're trying to build it, like, don't look at what happened there and think that that's a product of some sort of authoritarian micromanagement. It's really not that way at all. It was a lot of cheerleading, a whole lot of cheerleading.
Well, I don't know that you can get it's like it's this. I don't know that you can achieve soul of place that Ion has with this with some kind of a top-down, heavy-handed, authoritarian approach. I haven't seen it. You have to get the folks involved who have the spirit, who want to do something better, and afford them that opportunity. And it's out there. There's lots of people who can do it. They need that opportunity, and they'll respond.
We talk about, can you scale the tension between scale and soul? Like, can you do something of enormous scale and it be soulful? And I think that's really, really hard. Can a single hand imbue into something really special? And I think that's really, really difficult. I'm looking through at the bullet points we wanted to cover on here, and because I feel like we've been talking for an hour and a half, and I feel like we covered a bunch of great things. But some of the stuff we didn't talk about, you had mentioned wanting to kind of talk a little bit about Levittown and the market share of big builders. We hadn't talked about sort of how our design review process worked and the way we set it up really early and our aspirations for it and kind of the withering away of it. There are a handful of things, but I'm wondering if maybe we return to some of that in another episode. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's fine. I do think maybe we make the point that this aspiration for the design review process to wither away, and that sadly that now the folks who've taken control are much more heavy-handed and make it harder to get anything done there.
Yeah, I mean, that's, to me, it's a cautionary tale that applies not just for real estate development, but for really anything. If you create a system of governance, that it is that whoever inherits that system of governance is going to use it to in the way that they see is the right way to use it. And a thing that we didn't do, talking about, this is a regret I have, I don't know about you, but we set up the design review process really early on to establish a culture of design. And we did that pretty quickly, and it was within a few years of the neighborhood where the design review process was kind of like, certainly for the builders for their own specs, and certainly for the designers who had some experience within the neighborhood, the design review process had become pretty perfunctory. And there's really only sort of much of a design review thing going on for people who were totally new to the process. And we were moving in a direction, and I don't think we ever really did this, of just kind of having it wither away. And the neighborhood was so established by that point that a goofy looking house was not going to undermine the place. We'd really established this culture of how things would happen, and there was a huge amount of incentive among people to have their house be beautiful. And so we didn't do that. And so then with when our role as the kind of active developer of the neighborhood ended, that design review process got turned over to the homeowners association, the Ion Assembly. I mean, I haven't been involved in that in a long, long time, but if you can talk about, maybe you take it from here and describe what's happened with that.
Well, I haven't been involved much either. I just hear anecdotes of how long it takes, how bureaucratic it is. And these are from, architects who had done work there for years, and they tell these horror stories about how challenging it is to just do something simple. That is, I don't know if this got recorded, but, our aspiration, well, our design code, as we talked about earlier, was this really small set of simple rules that generally focused on building material, proportion, orientation to the street. We got into some deep that we'd have neighborhood standards for each neighborhood that we would advance, but for the most part, it was really simple. And as you say, it almost became perfunctory. And we actually had the aspiration was that it would just go away. By the time the last lot would be sold, we'd have so established this culture that we wouldn't need to even have a design review process. And we actually did, if you remember, Geoff, we had a guild master program where we had a number of architects or designers who we felt so we didn't need to hold their hand, and we trusted so much, and we just exempted them from the whole design review process. So,
and I think
that was aspiration, and we've gone in the opposite direction now, unfortunately.
We had talked about just totally exempting remodeling projects from the design review process. A lot of things we should have done, like that would have been a great step toward it totally withering away. Ratifying that sort of master program, like if you've done a certain number of homes, and then because what we were trying to do was there just was not a culture of great beauty, at least, or great beauty vernacular architecture at the time we started. And we needed to establish that culture, which is what the design review process did. But we established it. And so it was kind of like, if you break your arm, you need to wear a cast until your arm heals. But once your arm heals, if you keep wearing that cast, you're going to atrophy. You're going to hurt you. It's going to harm you by wearing it. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what's happened here. We didn't have we should have gotten rid of it. It's figured out the right way.
Yeah.
I'd say,
or at least how to, at least how not to let it go off the rails into authoritarian, or totalitarian, control. It's frustrating. And I know there have been folks in the neighborhood like, Joe Barnes, who was with us for a long time as general manager, and his wife, BJ, who's an architect. Joe's an architect too, but they've tried to talk about restoring that spirit that was there. And it really was a spirit. And now you're up against this. The spirit is one of almost fear of change, fear of somebody might do something wrong. And so it's just sad to see that.
A subtlety about our early design review process, we would not close on a lot until someone had their plans done and they were happy with, and we were both happy with it. And that went on for years. Yeah. And so we did that institutionally to put the incentive on us to make it as easy a process as possible for them to get to a great design, because we weren't going to get paid until they had something that they were really excited about doing.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point that get back to Mackie. He was not that taskmaster standing over someone with a stick or, with a red pen telling them everything that they could do wrong. His job was to inspire and encourage. Mm-hmm. And to lead. Yeah. So he did that well.
Yeah. Well, Vince, thanks for joining me. I think we had
Geoff.
Good to see you. I'm going to see you again soon. Thank you all for joining us for Yeoman. This has been a fun conversation with my brother Vince, and you can find a little bit about Ion. theionco.com is a website that has a good bit of this history. And if you just Google Ion Mount Pleasant, you'll see a whole bunch of pictures of the neighborhood. I hope you'll go check it out. Thanks a lot. And Vince too, you can, Vince's company is Low Key South, or Low Key, and the website is lowkeysouth.com, and that is LOCI south.com. So you can find Vince there. Thanks for joining us on Yeoman.
Okay. Thanks, Geoff.
Bye.
See you.